The indie horror genre holds a very special place in my heart, and if you're watching this, probably yours as well. While I love seeing these small games and developers get the praise they deserve by some of the platform's largest creators, there will always be some games that slip through the cracks. I wanted to create this series so that we can hopefully find some more hidden gems in the sea of indie horror games across the internet. This is Unknown Indie Horror Games, Volume 1. A Date in the Park is a short point-and-click indie horror game developed by Cloak and Dagger Games. It follows a tourist from London who believes he is meeting his Portuguese love interest, Catarina, for a date in the Tapadas das Necessidades Park in Lisbon, which by the way is a real location, so that's already a point for this game. I love when horror games use real-life inspiration for their locations. I think it really adds to the eeriness. Most of the game has you walking around, trying to find items and clues as you search the park for Catarina. We come across the park's first pond, where we reunite a poor duckling with its mother after it struggles to get into the water. One of the first real horror elements comes when we meet the gardener. He seems to be on edge after noticing a woman in the bushes. However, our protagonist can't understand Portuguese, so he is completely oblivious to the fact that this man just mentioned seeing a woman who may be Catarina. After wandering around for a bit, checking out the local architecture, and getting a feel for the map, we come back to the duck pond to see a horrific sight. It appears that the mother refused her offspring after we touched it, mangling it in the process before throwing it out of the water. We get to take care of the little fella throughout the rest of the game, and even get to name it. I do think it's rather selfish that instead of taking it to get care immediately, we just stuff it into our pocket while we look for our love interest. With a wounded Jeff in our pocket, and still no closer to finding Catarina than when we began, we're suddenly greeted with a box. Opening it reveals a balloon with a note attached to it, but it lands in the water and we need to recover a key from the gardener's bag before heading to the tool shed to grab these little grabbers. I like that name more than Long Telescopic Hoe.
Hey, that's pretty good.
The note kicks off a little scavenger hunt, which leads us to these two statues. The headless one, which contains Catarina's music box. We mess around with the water pump controls and flush out the music box, which contains another note from Catarina, leading us to yet another box. Oh boy, I hope it's another balloon. Oh, so that's where he went. Naturally, we book it to the exit, and it seems that Jeff is beginning to get a little bit more distressed. We call for help on the way using the park's phone, and while the Portuguese officials seem to understand our message, our guy here is still a little out of the loop because of the language barrier, which is a tremendous disadvantage when we find ourselves in this rather incriminating situation. Our tourists here not understanding the officer's directions and not being able to express to them that Jeff is causing havoc in our jacket pocket leads the officer to see us as a threat, neutralizing it, and then shortly thereafter being killed by Catarina. There really isn't a motive that I know of for the murder, and hey, a lot of the times in real life cases there isn't one either. But what I found most interesting was that the ending seems to insinuate that the duckling is an accomplice. I'm probably reading too much into it, but also it's a wild animal, so that's probably just a coincidence. Either way, I thought this game gave off a pretty unsettling vibe, and it isn't too much of a time sink, so overall it was enjoyable. COS 249 was released in August of 2024 by Void Inc. The game caught my eye because it tugged on my nostalgia for SCP, and from what I saw it takes inspiration from SCP and Five Nights at Freddy's, though I've never played the FNAF games, so I don't know, you let me know. You start off watching just one COS 2491, which is a one-eyed anomaly that tries to bust down the door to get to the player. This is a nice introduction to the game because it's a fairly simple one. You just shock it using the little doohickey here, being careful not to drain all the power before the timer runs out. You can let the creature slam the door 6 times, so I always did 4 just to be safe and to conserve as much energy as possible. Piece of cake. As you'd imagine, each stage adds an additional COS. COS 2492 is a computer that hacks into your energy reserve and attempts to drain it, which is obviously a no-no because we need that to keep out 2491. One complaint I have is that when you're dealing with COS 2492, it's hard to distinguish the neutral color from the green you need to be able to shut down the computer, which can trip you up, especially if you're playing on higher difficulties. But once you learn the pattern, it's still not that bad. But I think that is a change worth making. Even at this stage, the game was fairly simple and not too challenging. The only anomaly that actually managed to kill me was COS 2493, this demonic hand painting that you have to watch like a hawk because there are no audio clues, and the physical ones it does use are just subtle enough that I forgot about it. But luckily, it is one of the quicker anomalies to take care of. Same goes with COS 2494, a monster that attempts to crawl into bed with you to snuggle, I'm sure. All you have to do here is pull up the blanket. This COS has a very audible cue, so it's not very difficult to deal with. The final stage is no different than stage 4, but dying on this one was the worst part of the game for me. Like in stage 3, the stupid hand painting got me again. And look, I hate jump scares, like a lot. And the one you get when you die here, which I'm assuming is COS 2495, is one of the most obnoxious ones I've come across, almost topping the stupid Scary Maze game that gave me the trauma I associate with jump scares. Other than that, it was a pretty entertaining little multitasking game. I wouldn't play the higher difficulties personally because I felt like normal was already hard enough for me to focus on. But if you're into these type of games, you might enjoy the challenge. And like all the games in this video, it's free. Oh, and if you're wondering, yes, I did get my cake at the end. Speaking of cake and jump scares, the next game is called Don't Drop the Cake Prologue by Midoriyama. The description of this game promises uniquely designed, terrifying creatures and challenging gameplay mechanics, and it really hypes itself up as an overall scary experience. Upon starting, you'll notice that it borrows from the loop gameplay popularized by PT, starting off with some light teaser jump scares like this falling picture frame, this knocking on the door, and these bloodied handprints. As you progress, the game starts to shake things up a little bit. After a couple of loops, you get to this section where you have to balance on a beam. And while I'm sure that it was meant to be scary, I don't know why it made me laugh seeing this body just ragdoll from the sky and hit the beam. My laughter quickly turned back into fear, however, upon encountering the game's first real monster. There's nothing overly terrifying about him, he's just a G-man with a flower slapped on his head. But I don't like being stalked, especially when I feel even more vulnerable by not being able to just sprint away without the risk of dropping the cake. I panicked the first time I saw him and just ended up walking straight into him and dying. In this section, the goal is to find 6 switches in 6 different rooms that will unlock a gate and open up our escape. It's not a hard task, but with the creature walking around and you still having to focus on balancing the cake, it makes for a tense one. Avoiding him isn't terrible either. You just walk into a room, lock the door, and wait for him to leave. I did begin to get a little impatient trying to find the last door, so I started just messing around with my mouse and accidentally dropped the cake. Well. If it isn't the consequences of my own actions. Luckily, the game was nice enough to let me continue from where I left off. Upon finally opening the gate, we complete the first real level and trigger a chase scene with Crazy Hand from Super Smash Bros. And then we end the prologue with this cute ending scene. Overall, I think this is a fun idea for a horror game, but I have to knock off some points for the AI-generated paintings in the hallways and the obnoxiously loud children's screech at the end here. If it stood out to you, you can wishlist the full game on Steam. Cake out of 10. Bleeding Roots is a short narrative-driven indie horror game developed by Mechanicoi. I will say that I played this game at the end of one of my nights of recording and it left me feeling incredibly somber. The game is simple. You walk around your home and water your plants. Doing this a total of 4 times, the spring introduces the game's conflict, a divorce. It's safe to assume that these plants belong to the partner, but now the responsibility falls on us since they're gone. Each time you water a plant, you get some background on the type of plant, along with a bit of personal input from our character. This initial stage is innocent, albeit sad, but then you get to the shed, where things take a bit of a darker turn. Each consecutive season sees our character get more and more pessimistic when interacting with the plants, almost as if this is supposed to represent resentment toward the partner or toward themselves. And to end each season, we have to perform the same ritual, which seems to be giving way for a mysterious plant to grow in the shed, created and nurtured through our character's suffering. It now mirrors me, expelled from the life it was meant to have. Its beauty lies in contrast to its incompleteness, a twisted reflection of myself. But now I see the truth. No mere seed can serve as a vessel worthy of this blood-tainted soil. The earth craves for something far deeper. The final season, winter, and we've lost all hope. There are unpaid bills in the mailbox. All of the plants seem to have died, and along with them, the last shred of joy in our body. The mysterious plant in the shed is fully grown into something bigger than us, my child. And finally, we give in. Though this was a heavier game, I especially loved the writing and the interactive credits. I'm not sure if this was some sort of artistic relief from someone on the development team going through something similar, but even if it's not, this is a situation I think is more common than not, and again, while heavy, it's beautiful to be able to relate to mourning the loss of someone you once shared a life with, yourself, and to feel seen if you've ever faced the struggles represented in this game. Developed by Melt, Terroro is a psychological indie horror game that follows an aspiring TikToker. I never thought I'd ever use that sentence in a video. And her boyfriend, Pablo. Honestly, the visuals for the game are what caught my eye when I was looking for games to include in this compilation. I'm a sucker for PS1 graphics. The gameplay on this one is fairly simple, and a majority of the time you'll be helping Roro set the table while she prepares dinner. So the Coke is for both of us? I usually crush one of these suckers by myself. One of the more ominous aspects is this TV that, when switched to a different channel, shows what appears to be a camera feed, though we never find out what this really is. After a few loops of helping Roro set the table, eating the same dish of spaghetti I think, and going to sleep, we wake up to her screams and what sounds like glass breaking. The game makes you think this is some sort of break-in, but when you go downstairs, you find Roro making TikToks at 3 AM for some reason, and both times she's accidentally dropped the glass. Yes, this happens a total of 2 times before Pablo makes the rash decision to leave Roro for following her TikTok dreams. Although I'm starting to suspect that that's not the only reason he's leaving. Distraught to be losing her partner to her obsession, Roro ties us in the basement, giving us nothing more than this little bell to ring when we want a serving of her special, again, spaghetti I think? I still don't know. And it's here that we get clues as to how to progress. A photo of Mangel, a man I assume to be one of Roro's victims, exes, and on the back, the clue, to attract darkness, you must destroy the light. It seems that Mangel has gone through this before. After breaking the plate a couple of times from misclicking, we bait Roro into swapping out the light bulb and pull the greatest lick of all time by moving the workout bench and watching her plummet to her death and obtaining the key. Just kidding, did you really think that the psycho chef was going to succumb to a 2-foot drop? The final part of the game is a chase, though not a hard one. All we have to do is go back up to the bedroom and use the open window to escape. And just when you think you're safe, Roro strikes again. Overall, Terroro was a cool little game. This one loses points because of the damn near jump scare, but gains some back with his clever ending.
¿A dónde te crees que vas?
This game wasn't an original part of the plan for the video, nor is it as small as some of the other ones, though it's still very much an indie game. I was watching a PBG stream in which he was playing My Summer Car, and decided, hey, this game looks close enough and it's on sale, so I bought it expecting a chill little driving simulator with some crude humor and funny glitches. And while I did get that, I didn't know that the game had zombies, creepy gas station serial killers, and killer but somewhat helpful rabbits. Alright, yeah, you push the back and I'll get the side. And I found these churches giving me flashbacks to Resident Evil 4. Suffice to say that my relaxing drive turned into glitchy, unsettling, low-res nightmare fuel. Make sure that you click to reveal all of a game's user-defined tags. Thank you so much for checking out these unknown indie horror games with me. Are there any games on this list you've played? Do you have any favorite smaller games you think deserve a little bit more love? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to stick around. I'd love to have you. And if you want to further support the channel, please consider becoming a member. That's all I have for this video. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one.